Richards channel, where you always learn a multitude of key concepts to improve your painting skills.
Go.
Come right on in. Are you here for paint class?
No, I'm just looking.
Okay, well, feel free to walk around anywhere. You just keep in mind, if you walk right in front of me, you'll be on camera.
Alrighty, 3, 2, 1, go.
Okay, welcome to paint class. We're here at my studio in Danbury, North Carolina. If you're ever in North Carolina, please stop in and join us for a paint class. We're here with all the students, and you can paint along with us and learn as we're learning. So today I'm going to break my word, because last week I said I was done with the snow painting. And one thing that happens, and I hope that you'll think about this as you're painting, that you'll get to a point where you go, okay, I'm done. And don't necessarily make that be like the end of the world, I'm done. You know, give yourself the ability to rethink that. So when you see a painting, you say, okay, I'm finished. Always do this, always put it in some place where you're going to be walking past it on some kind of a regular basis. You know, if you're in your house or something, maybe, you know, on the counter there right as you go into the kitchen or something, so that you're not like being faced with it every second, but subconsciously you kind of are able to see it. And something that's going to happen is that at some point you're going to walk past it and you're going to stop in mid-step and be like, why didn't I see that before? You know, and it's like you're seeing it with new eyes all of a sudden, you know. Another good thing is, you know, if you have a friend, you show it to them and say, what do I need to do to this? You know, I mean, that's why some of y'all come to paint classes. Part of it is I'm going to go around and say, well, I would do this, I would do that, let me suggest this and that. And so as we're doing this, same thing happens to me. I'm like, okay, I guess I'm done. And then I'm like, no, wait a minute, there's these other things, or I could push this or that. So that's what we're going to do today. We're going to push this a little bit, using that term that we've talked about in the past, where by pushing we mean making something a little more extreme. It might be a little darker, a little lighter, might be a little warmer, a little cooler, you know, whatever it is. So let's look at this. And one of the things that we did at the end of the video last time was we put some blues in the shadows of these trees back here, and then added some oranges that hopefully will be interpreted as light on rocks on out there, but it does not have the impact that I would like for it to have. It does not just like force my eye to go right in there. Some of the snow could be cleaned up, some snow could be added, and maybe even a little more work on the water. Now, one thing I want to point out that you may be looking at and say, maybe he needs to fix this, is this in the foreground here is just kind of a little bit fuzzy. And it's not got the sharp edges and clarity that you might expect to see if you were looking right at that patch, right? And so I'm not going to mess with that though. And I'll tell you why. Because my point of interest is back here. And if we have everything in the painting equally in focus, where's your eye being drawn to? So you want things to be uninteresting in places, you want things to be a little fuzzy out of focus in places, and you want all that clarity to go to the place that you want their eye to go to. So let's work on some of these things. So I'm going to blue this up just a little bit more. I'm going to go with just a little bit lighter blue and a little bit more purpley blue. I'm mixing these together, and I'm just going to check it, okay? Because I may need to go darker. I want it to be shadows, but I want it to have a little more chroma to it. So I'm just kind of rubbing it on back here. And wherever there's highlights, wherever there's areas that are sticking out from the paint on the canvas, that's what grabs this a little more than other places. So when I just rub it on there, and one thing you want to do when you're finishing off a painting is you want to make sure that what you're seeing is what other people are going to see. So in other words, you want to get back from your canvas and have a look back here where where someone that was viewing it on the wall would notice it. What would they see? It gives you a lot more insight into exactly what kind of changes you need to continue making. Or maybe you'll see that and you'll go, wait a minute, I went way, way too far with that. And so since the rest of the canvas is dry, you can just take a little bit of solvent with a brush, and just like an eraser, you could erase it, you could take it right back off. So I am going to see if I can't push some of this orange that we put back here. I'm making it lighter with a little bit more white in the paint. And I think I'm also going to use some of this cad yellow medium to just make it a little bit yellower. That'll have a tendency to make it feel a little brighter. Do you see that paint? Here's where we started. Here's where I mixed to. And then this is what I've pushed to. Okay? So, and I also, using that concept that we have of making thick to thin paint. So most of the canvas is thin. Anywhere that's thick stands out from the canvas, and so physically light hits on that shelf that you're creating from the thick paint, reflects off into someone's eye, and it actually appears brighter because it really is, because you're really actually creating light. So let's make sure that we scoop up a nice big thick swath of it on the palette knife, and we're going to not paint it in like we kind of did with that blue. We're going to apply it. Now there's like a little shelf right there. It's going to help it to appear to be a little brighter. Let's just add to a little bit of this right here. And then that's about it. I think that is as far as I'm going to push that. Okay, how about some of this white? Anytime you want to apply little raised places with your palette knife, smooth it out flat and then cut in with your palette knife. And what you can do is turn it over and look, how much do I have there? You know, it's a good way of being able to determine it. If the line that you're trying to place is shorter than this, you can take your finger and just rub right off so that it's exactly the length you want it to be, so that when you apply it, it's getting applied the exact length you wanted it to be. Now I'm going to add just a little bit more here. So what I wanted to get was the sense that even though this is in shadow, there's some light coming across it on out over here. I also want to do that a little bit under the tree right over here, so that we get a sense that there is a shelf right there, and I didn't want that. I accidentally touched it there. I did not mean it to be there at all. Okay, now let's get back and see how that looks. Okay, I may need to lighten up just a little bit in here to kind of create that rock shelf a little bit more. I think there's a stampede about to happen. I heard some stomping. that squeaky floor. So I'm going to see if I can't get permission to fix that. Can't imagine someone would say, no, don't fix that squeak. We like it. A little more work on that sheen. We could put a few dark lines in there, neutralize out our dark lines. You know what happens in shadow is that if there's something dark, it tends to not just be dark, it tends to be dark and neutral. And our video time's just about over, but I can tell you, I'm going to fiddle with this water over and over again until I just feel like it just sings. I want it to have a really nice feeling of fluidness, of wetness.
That's pretty.
And you just keep playing with things, y'all. Don't be so quick to say, okay, well, I'm done because I got paint on the whole painting. That's rarely ever really done to the point that you're going to feel like it's truly finished. And I'm still not happy with that. It's going to be a while before I get to where I really feel like it's not just a matter of like water. When you have water and ice and snow all in the same scene, you got to take into account what's happening and where's it happening at, because there's going to be all these change-ups. And back here in the shadows with a lot of this, it's a little too chromatic maybe. Some of this might want to be softened out, not so hard-edged. Maybe a little darker in a few places. Sorry y'all, I can't seem to make myself stop today. Just always stay true to your values. whatever your value is, if you're doing highlights, if you're doing shadows within that value range, we're talking about, you know, those big blocks of value and color. Make sure that you don't start adding something that breaks up that value so much that it no longer appears to be part of that value range. Awesome. So now what we're going to do is we're going to push the values in the trees. So I'm doing a little bit of darkening up the shadow side of the trees, and letting it wrap around underneath some of what would be going on in the lit side of the trees. The main thing that I'm wanting to do is to push that lit side so that it really pops out. I feel like that's the only thing that's left that's really not coming together about this painting. So we want to get that really, really popping.
Correct. Before you do that, the colors, paint colors that you were using for the shadow was the ultramarine blue and the lemon yellow, and what was the third? Was it the alizarin? Or was
Burnt
it
sienna.
Burnt sienna. Okay.
Yep. So since we're mixing a light color, we want to start with light colors. So white's kind of light, and I'm bringing yellow into that white. When we were mixing for the snow, do you remember me saying that we wanted the snow color, when you looked at it, anybody that looked at it would say, oh, that's white, but you added enough yellow to it so that it warmed up that white a little bit. But they would look at it and say white. They wouldn't say it's a light yellow. The opposite is true here. I'm making a light yellow, and then I'm going to bring some blue into that. And we may need to neutralize it some, but we're going to mix just a really light green, and then we'll neutralize it out however much we need to. So let's begin. Well, I don't have any wet manganese on my palette. Let's see. Oh, that is a really light green. Definitely want it to be warmer than that. I want it to be more neutral than that. But just for giggles, let's see if it is a value that would be great. Oh, that's really light. See how light that is in value? So we're heading in the right direction as far as how light or how dark. Let's add some yellow ochre to it. Get it warmed up a little bit. That's really neutralizing it out too. Okay, it's going to have to be hugely warmer than it is, or a little greener than it is. So we're kind of using that as our starting point, how light that is. See if we can't get this color that we're creating to get as close to being as close to as light as that as possible, and yet still be warm and still be green. So let's just say I'm going to want to get back from this. That color change may be too much. We can always throw a little bit of brown into it. And you'll notice I'm just touching some places with it so that there is an occasional, like really bright, way more chromatic bit. That was too much. Play around with these things, you know. Try something. Yeah, that's way too, that needs to be way warmer than it is. Way warmer. So we try this and we get a feel for it on that one tree, and that'll inform us on everything else. So let's try adding this. I warmed it up a whole lot. Trying to slow down, be a lot more selective about it. Try not to just repeat the same pattern over and over again. If you notice you are, slow down and stop. Choose to do something a little different. We'll definitely get more light in there, but we may need to go back and fix it by adding, you know how we talked about there being little needles that catch all these light and shadows, 1,000 different ones. So you may have to go back in with some other color to kind of accommodate for some of that. Change up the angle of your brush. If you use more the flat of your brush, you're going to get a little wider swath, maybe a little gentler touch, instead of so much of a line like I'm doing with a lot of the. And then we'll go back in. Now that I feel like I got the value correct, I can go back in and mess with it with some of the brown, bringing some of that brown feel into it that we were talking about last week, where got away. So we got, and y'all Y'all got to toy with this. You got to play with this. I'm going to use my modified fan brush so this is a little more frazzly. Definitely want to go in and redo the shadows now also. It's almost like you're starting over again in a way. You just keep adding these layers, leaving things that you like, working on things that you don't like, until you finally pop and blow the top of your head off. All the pressure you're putting on yourself. Well, we got a lot more light in there, and certain places we'll have to go back and adjust the shadows. So that's what I would suggest to you next, is work it back and forth a little bit. Go back in and adjust the shadows so that that light pops out even more. You keep fiddling with these things. This is the detail work. It's not details. It's just working those shadows back and forth, working those warms and cools back and forth, working those lights and darks, until eventually it just pops and you're like, okay, that is fabulous, you know. And if it doesn't turn out fabulous, if you just feel like, I can't stand to look at this anymore, don't look at it anymore. Take and put it off to the side. So that was a study. I did a good job. I learned some stuff. Now I'm going to start over and do another new painting, and it's going to be fabulous this time. So always give yourself that break. I don't think even Leonardo da Vinci, made masterpieces every single painting he ever did. If he did, good for him. He was Leonardo. We're not. Yeah, that's okay. Okay. Anybody have any questions before I move on?
So, when I'm sitting here watching you paint, the words keep going through my head. Perfection, complicity, imperfection. How do you know, like, before you even started, I thought it was pretty perfect. And that's where I get confused.
Yeah.
Is when do you stop? When do you say, okay, do you always want perfect, or do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah,
it just
absolutely.
Can keep going and going and going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, nobody's going to be able to tell you that answer for you. I think bottom line is painting ought to be fun. It ought to give you pleasure. If it's stressing you out, it's probably time to start a new painting. You may come back to it. A year or two may go by and you may have it in a stack, because it just got to where it's like, I hate this thing, but I've invested too much to pitch it in the can,
Yeah.
And like, put it in a stack, and then a year later you're going through that stack like, what is this stuff? And you'll pull it out and you go, you know what, I can fix that. I think I could. It's not that bad. There's just these few things need to be done. And then you go back to it if you have energy for it, If not, always, think of these things that we're doing as studies. You're just something that you're doing, and you're trying to learn and grow a little bit at a time. And then, if it stops being fun, it's time to put it down. If you get to a point where you're like, that's pretty good, and I think I've invested enough time in it, then put it in a frame, I had a master painter that taught me a lot. His name was Heiner Hertling, and he always said, a painting is a painting until you put it in a frame and then it becomes a piece of art. And it's amazing how true that is, because you will go, I'm not satisfied with this. This is just, it's a piece of, and then put it in a frame, and all of a sudden you'll be like, oh, you know what? That's better than I thought it was. It's actually pretty good. You know what? Actually, I like that. Try that. You keep some frames around for the size canvas you have. Just ever so often pop it in a frame, and if you're like, okay, then that's probably the answer you were looking for, because then you're like, oh, you know what? I think I'm
I
done.
like that. I have one more question.
Okay, good.
So the layering. I got up this morning and I walked outside.
Wait a second. This is Sally, by the way.
So I walked outside today, perfect, still have a lot of snow on the ground. And I was thinking about this picture, and I'm thinking, I've got my layering all wrong.
Yeah.
And that's why I think I'm so unhappy with what I did, is because it's like the chicken or the egg. Is it the snow and then the logs, or is it the logs and then the snow? And again, I'm thinking of perfection when I probably shouldn't.
Yeah.
But when you're dealing with snow, so it seems like in my mind, you do the base of snow, then you put your objects in there, and then you go back with the snow.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, think of any painting really as this layering effect, back and forth, back and forth. The approach that most people take for painting, most beginner painters anyway, is that they start working on an area, and when they get that to where they feel like that's perfection, then they move on to the rest of it. And you'll notice that what I always suggest is get in these big blocks of value and color right off the bat, so that you get a feel of like, so if this is this, it's this compared to all these other elements in my painting, right? And so the way that I teach and the way that I suggest is that people do kind of an out of focus layer, then they go back and they do a next layer so that it's more developed on that second layer, and then maybe a third layer or a fourth layer. But you'll notice what will happen is the layers become less involved with each layer that you do. So you may do a little bit of this and that over here and a couple of things over there, and you're done, you know. Because what you want to ask yourself is if you started with these big blocks of value and color and you looked at it, and I hear you say this about my paintings often, you'll be like, I already thought that it looked like a good painting like that, you know, and that's because it got those big blocks in and they're strong, you know, it has an impact, you know. And then when I start breaking those blocks up by adding details, now what's happening? The blocks are losing their strength. The more details I put into those blocks, the weaker it gets as a big block. So that's a balance thing that you have to kind of work out over time. And you get better at it the more you paint, but you always struggle with it. Like, how much am I going to break that up? How much detail am I going to add in to where it's now, it may be more detailed, but it's reading as a weaker painting. You see where I'm going? Yeah. Anyone else? We wanted to zoom in on somebody.
You did.
Okay.
You did.
All right. Okay, well, y'all can go to paint, and I'm going to come around and look at what you're doing.
Please
and
do.
see what we can do to help you
Thank you.
individually.
Thank you.
All right, go for it.
So the same things that I was saying to Sally is working on this one as well. You know, I got to say though, because I'm maybe not saying this enough to everybody. Sally, I hope you're hearing. Y'all are painting fabulously. It's just beautiful. Your painting is beautiful.
Would you repeat that, please?
She wants to
What was I
record it.
saying?
Get your video out.
Yeah, I remember now. Oh, your painting is fabulous. It's just beautiful. Yeah. I just wanted y'all to know, because I come along and I pick at everything, you know. And so I just want y'all to know that you're making wonderful works.
Well, thank you.
So, and you're very brave to be on camera also, so I really appreciate that too. And I want you to know you're helping people out there when they see these videos. They're going to feel like, oh, I'm a part of paint class. I want them to feel that way. So same things that I said to Sally is that when I look at this, most of the values that I see are somewhere kind of in the middle range of values. Even the snow is in the middle, the lit part of the snow is in the middle range of values. And I suspect what's happening is that as you're painting your snow in, the rest of the paint is still wet, and you're picking up just little bits of that.
You're right, yeah.
And so it just dirties it up just enough that you don't get that real spark of bright white. But you really don't want a bright white everywhere, because if you have it everywhere, it becomes nothing. But if you can go back in with completely clean, uncontaminated white, and just be very selective, very frugal, just add some little bits of you know, bright white in certain places, all of a sudden, bam, that's really going to go. Because Sally, her darks were good, and so are yours, but it's the lights that I'm not seeing in
Would
there.
you suggest, as you did, using the palette knife to apply the white?
Yeah, it's a great thing to do. So just as I was showing y'all in my demonstration, you lay that white out flat and then just cut in with your palette knife so that you get a bead. And then instead of wiping it on, you just touch it and apply it, and it leaves a little bead along there, you know. And that bead's thick, so it'll catch light off the ceiling, reflected back to you, and then, you know, it actually shines when you do that. So
I think that's what I'll do today. I'll whiten that up with that.
Yeah, but be frugal, okay?
Okay, don't just slap it on.
Yeah, and you know, as you're doing that, you can have the freedom to be a little bit experimental with it, because this is dry from last week. So if you go, I think I put too much, I've gone too far, just take a wet brush and wash it right back off, and then you go, oh no, you know what, I actually do like it the way it was. You need to put it back on.
Right.
You know, so.
All right, I will do that. Now the second step, what is the next thing you would advise me to do?
Make sure that you get some of that spark back over in here to where it's taking us on up the stream, and you know, maybe add little bits of that, a little bit more orangey, a little more chromatic
Kind of do that
sparks
up
to
there?
the rocks. Do that up there
Okay.
too.
Would you
'Cause
do that blue up here as well, like you did on yours?
You know, the concept behind that is what the French Impressionists figured out, was that there were color complements that, when in close proximity to one another, energized one another. And so when you look at that, and I put even more, I got like really pushed
You
that
pushed
blue.
it, yeah.
And if you look at that from over here, you don't see any of that blue.
No, you don't.
But that blue in close proximity to that orange helps it to pop out. So whereas before from over here, you wouldn't be able to see that orange at all. But now you do. And you know, you don't see it like overly, so like it doesn't just reach out and grab you by the collar or
Right.
anything, but it's there, you know.
Okay.
So yeah, little bits of that. And you've got a nice neutralized feel to most of this. And so anything high chroma is just going to be like, bam, you
Okay.
know, you're going to really notice it. So be frugal with it. Add it, like the snow, add it a little bit more and a little bit more to the point that you're like, okay, this is it, or maybe I went too far, take it back off.
Okay,
You know? Yep.
thank you.
A lot of work on developing your rocks, so they have a real nice feel of being, you know, kind of broken and having form and shape to them. That's impressive. This right here, like you followed what I was saying about bringing that light on over kind of where you're seeing it through the trees. But then you took it a step farther than any of the rest of us and created a rock shelf right below it. Excellent. Really like that. This rock over in here, I would suggest to you to break it up a little bit, because with it all having the same kind of horizontal feel to it, it could read, instead of going back, it could read as just one big rock that's standing up like a column. You run into the same problem with waterfalls and things like that, and or a lake. You know, so a lake's laying flat, you got all those lines, the kind of reflective lines coming towards you.
Sure.
If you don't get little cross-cut lines in there randomly, then it feels like it's a waterfall instead of a lake.
True.
So we always got to kind of be thinking, what would other people be thinking if they saw this? So I would just break this up in the way you could probably most easily do that, is to carry some of these lines on across, like this line that's under here,
Right.
just darken it just a little bit and bring it all the way over, like even back into the tree. And do the same thing like right here, and maybe right here, right here, you know, and so what'll happen is now you're breaking that mass up a little bit.
True.
Yeah.
How is this? This looks like it's floating all the way down.
I think that's fine though, because it's over on the side, so it has a feel that it's rocks kind of going off screen,
Yeah,
so to speak.
Yeah, but this
Yeah.
needs to be broken up. Put
Yes.
more color in it. Pull it
Yeah.
where it looks like it's got cracks in it.
Yes. Yeah, sure would.
Yeah.
So, and then, do you have a modified fan brush, or have you tried that?
I left it at home, but
Okay. Well, mine's up there. You're welcome to use mine.
this has got sort of like a fan tip to it. But what do you want me to do?
Just let's get maybe some yellow ochre or some color like that. You have some right there.
Right.
And just use that fan brush and push up on it. Let it do its own natural kind of spreading out.
Gotcha.
Because see, this pattern looks very much like a pattern, right? But if you use one of those fan brushes like that, and you kind of push in and up the canvas, as you push in, it just naturally kind of spreads as it goes, and it leaves, and it doesn't go in any specific pattern. It just kind of randomly spreads however it's going to spread, and so it ends up leaving more of a randomness to it, which feels more natural.
Yeah, I got you.
So yeah, but that's looking great.
Okay, like that.
What I do is work off the back of it.
On the back of it.
So do like this. First off, just spread it flat so that you have an even layer,
Right.
and then clean your palette knife off so that there isn't residue. Then at a 45-degree angle, so
45.
this would be a 90-degree angle, 45. Drag it across, and see how the paint's disappearing where I'm
Right.
dragging? So depending on how far you've dragged it and saw that it's doing that, will depend on, you can have a guess at how much paint's building up on the back side of it. Turn it over and look, and there's your bead right
Gotcha.
there. And then, when you apply it, don't apply it like this, but just
Tap
touch
it.
it at that same 45-degree angle, press a little bit, and see there it leaves that bead.
Gotcha.
So you transfer the bead from here to there. You may be able to do that 2 or 3 times before you have to reload a new bead.
Okay, I was doing 90 instead of 45.
Oh,
That's the
okay.
reason it wasn't coming on there, but I got you now.
Very good. Okay.
So what I'd like to do is just erase all of this, because I've lost it all. I've lost my proportions. I feel uncomfortable with the rocks. And I really didn't know where to start back, or
Okay.
where to start.
Well, to begin with, no, don't erase anything out. Just use what you have. Here's one of the main rules that you want to think about. At some point, you want to take that reference away.
Okay.
And this is a piece of art all in itself.
Okay.
Because if you're getting hung up on photorealistic quality of copying this to that,
I was.
then that's something you need to give yourself a break about. I know an artist that she does absolutely photorealistic art. Like you can't tell it from a photograph, right?
Okay.
And what she does is she has, I don't know how many, but like 1,000 of these little bottles, little squeeze tube bottles with little needle on the end of it, and it's all printing dies. And so she does it pixel for pixel, the correct colors. And you know, I'm amazed by what she produces, but honestly, what I'll tell you is, she has become a human printer.
It's almost like a paint by number too.
It's a paint by number. She is a printer. She's doing the same thing a printer does. Pixel for pixel, it's picking out the right color. She's not even mixing colors. She's just using dyes to a specific color. And she's creating photographs. She's a printer that creates photographs. But Richard Schmidt always said this. He said, when you paint a painting, it should be painterly. It should have a feeling that it's a painting, not a photo. So also, though, if you take the photo away, you're just seeing it for what it is, and you're like, I like this about it, I don't like that about it, and you can work on what you don't like, but you don't have to be now comparing it to that as your standard for whether it's good or not. So, you know, to begin with, you do absolutely want that photo reference because it helps you, guide you in the beginning. But at some point, it becomes more of a wall that holds you back from doing what you need to do to be happy with it. So when I'm looking at this, I'm immediately seeing two things. One is that you are capturing the feel and mood of that place, you know, and so that's fantastic. The thing that I also notice is that the variation of values is kind of somewhere toward the middle. So your darks are really actually pretty good, so I shouldn't say that, but your lights are what is missing in a few places. So most of this snow is a light grayish color, okay?
Okay.
And probably why that is when you're first painting a painting and you're painting stuff in, it grabs little bits of the other paint around it, and it picks up just a little bit,
Okay.
just enough to alter it. So what I would suggest is to go back in with some fresh white on your palette that you know is not contaminated with anything, and to just drop in some pure white in a few places. Be frugal with it, because less is more.
Okay.
And then the only other thing I would say is this back here, it has the same crisp, clear feel about it as these trees here. So what you can do is go over this with just kind of maybe a little bit darker toned grayish green color.
Okay.
Just a thin, watery mix, you know, so that it is very translucent. So you're adding a glaze, in other words. Just glaze it a little bit so that it takes out some of the detail that's in there. You may want to kind of stay away from the lit side of the trees and do that more over on the dark side. And then as far as the rocks are concerned, I heard you, that
Yeah.
you're feeling like, oh, the rocks, I don't know about the rocks. Let me suggest this, that just do a few, just enough so that we actually do see a little bit of rock in there. Do them over here on the lit side.
Okay.
You forget about this side, because in the shadows, not only are things dark, and dull, but they lose their detail a lot. So it's okay in shadows to not really see things clearly, but in the light you might want to see it more. And so if you did some rocks over here, just think in this terms, 2 values. So you can just, on your palette, mix up 2 values, one a little bit darker, one a little bit lighter, that are both in that kind of brown or orangey brown range, you know. And then go over here and look for change-ups in the landscape. Like right here I notice, see you've got this gray area in between these 2 snowbanks. So I would put a rock right in a place like that, because I would be thinking like wherever it drops off and it's no longer snow, it probably is dropping off from some rock.
Oh, okay, that makes sense. Yeah.
So I would look for places like that, like here, maybe there, maybe here, you know, the same kind of thing. So on the top, just put lit part, you know, that lighter mix. On the bottom, put the darker mix.
Okay.
And use your palette knife, maybe, or if not, take your paintbrush and smooth those colors out flat. Clean your brush and then push in so that it just kind of rolls up on the end, and then just apply it. Don't paint it in, but just touch it so that some of that paint comes off on the canvas. And if you do that, I think this whole paint is just going to go like bam, all of a sudden.
Do I need to come back and put lighter colors on this side?
I think it's okay the way it is right now, but you know how you really answer that question? Do those obvious things,
Okay.
then you have something to compare it to, right? So now once you get those done, you can say, should I do this or shouldn't I do this? It helps you to decide that. Yeah.
Okay, I'll start on those and then I'll come back to like the color of the water.
Okay,
Is that
cool.
good?
Yes.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah, sounds great.
Okay, go for it.
Yeah, it's got so much that is so really nice about it. But it's got a few things that are standing out to me.
Okay. Oh,
Okay.
then tell me what they are so I can change them.
So, and this is common in portraiture. You put all this effort into the person, but then the clothing is accurate in the drawing and everything, but look at how the shades and tones are the same throughout the whole shirt. You got the light coming from the left and the shadow on the right. This needs to get neutral over in here.
Okay.
And so definitely like in the folds, see how you were neutralizing some in the folds?
Yep.
Yeah.
I'm not sure
So-
that I really was neutralizing. It was darker, but
Okay.
you're right. It needs
So-
to be neutralized.
Yeah, neutralize. And then one thing that's kind of helpful to do is while this paint is still wet and this is still wet, you can take a soft dry brush and just tickle it back and forth on the edges a little bit
To make the
so that
edges-
it loses the edge just a little bit, because that's like whenever his shoulder or his arm wraps back around in here, it's got depth to it, you know? So it gets this fuzziness because of the depth to it. So this just feels flat,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
So if you were to do that, that's gonna pull him together as a body,
Okay.
you know? Because this, I mean, like this is just perfect, you know? But then it's matched right up with this that doesn't feel as perfect
Yeah.
as that.
Yeah.
So, yeah. And then one last thing, and you may just smack me in the head when I say this, but there's something about his mouth on this side,
I
right
know.
over in here, that doesn't feel like George Clooney to me.
Okay.
See this right here? Boy, that is George Clooney to the max, right?
Yeah.
Now, let's take away that maximum part and this is a really good thing to do with any painting, but portraiture in particular, is
Separate out.
take a piece of paper and lay it, a nice dark gray or something, and lay it. Okay, take away all of this, like that, that's George Clooney right there, right? Put this right here, and that's
Something wrong with the
it's
mouth.
not George Clooney right there. So I don't
Okay.
have the, a photo. I have a pretty good memory of things that I see, and I couldn't tell you for sure what's not quite right about it because my memory's not that good. But I can look at it and say, something's not George Clooney about that portion of his mouth. And
Okay.
I would even say,
I agree with that.
I would even say this side, look at that. That's
Uh-huh.
George Clooney, right there.
Uh-huh.
But now that,
It's the lower lip, I think.
it's that right in there.
Now,
That, it doesn't work for me.
okay.
So, I don't know. I can't tell you for sure what to do because if I had a if I had that photo reference, I might be able to. But you know what it may be? It may be that this needs to be darkened. Oh, look, it's right there. It's just what my finger's covering. That is the only
Yeah, the
part
bottom,
of
the
it
bottom left, right?
that is not right. I think you need to darken this in here, kind of neutral
Yeah.
dark,
Yeah.
because you got the light coming from over here, so the bottom lip is gonna. Did you ever notice the top lip is always in shadow? The bottom lip is more lit
Yeah.
because the top lip comes
Try to
over and
find
it
that.
leans out. If it does, and the light is coming from over here, the top lip will actually shadow the bottom lip some. So just, let's see. It's this right here, Deborah. This needs to be in shadow.
Mm-hmm.
Let me
Okay.
be more specific.
I know.
Let me get a pointer.
Here's the photo reference.
Oh, there it is. See, it's in shadow more. So as you can see, the light on the bottom lip here, and it's wrapping around to our right, but it's much thinner as it's coming around because it's going into shadow. It's losing the light. So this portion of it
Yeah.
needs to be in shadow.
Okay.
And I think, look at that. Gosh, that's so him right there. And then I take that away and something.
Something's wrong.
Yeah.
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 Okay.
So nice.
Thank
The
you.
eyes are like alive. Yeah. Cool.
For me, the portraits, it's all about the eyes.
Oh yeah, they say it's the mirror of the
Yeah.
soul, so to speak, right? Yeah, very, very nice.
Thank you.
Okay. Hey there, I hope you enjoyed that video, and I hope you're getting a lot of value out of all of these videos that we're posting on the artist Craig Richards channel. There's all kinds of how-tos, there's the weekly paint class, and there's occasional outings like going out in plein air somewhere. We're going to be going down the Yadkin River in the spring, going to museums, things like that. I think you'd enjoy those. If you're getting value out of these, then like, subscribe, hit the notification bell. You have to subscribe in order to be able to hit the notification bell, and that's for you. The reason I'm saying that is so that you know when the next paint class is coming out, so that if you're working on a painting and we're doing it again the next week, that you can follow along with us. And leave us comments, not just for me, but for the students as well. Say, Deb, you did a great painting, Kitty, you did a great painting, or Craig, you did a great demonstration this week. That builds us up. And we want to build you up as well. We want to help you to keep painting and keep growing. You're doing great. Don't tell yourself you're not. You are doing wonderful. Just keep at it, and you'll learn and grow each week with us. So, happy painting. Okay.